الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين.
You got now the treasure, khazina, you have it. I tell you. After, as you like, you just take it. Charge yourself with the Shaykh. Alhamdulillah. He is kutub from the America. No doubt. No doubt on that. Wallahi.
Is that on? Yeah, Bismillah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. الحمد لله. اللهم افتح علينا حكمتك وانشر علينا رحمتك يا ذا الجلال والإكرام. وصل اللهم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله الكرام ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. الحمد لله. So we're on one. Bismillah. So this is the third chapter, and this concerns what a lot of popular misconceptions about knowledge, what's from knowledge, praiseworthy knowledge, but is actually not from it. And then in what way are some of the Islamic sciences negative and some blameworthy. And then he talks about the problem of mustalahat, or technical terms, the problem of words that we use and we misunderstand their original intent in the Quran. And he goes through, which is very important points. And he talks about fiqh, about jurisprudence, the meaning of fiqh, that we define it as jurisprudence, the meaning of ilm, how we define knowledge itself, tawheed, the unity, tadhkir, which is exhortation, hikmah, which is wisdom, and then also what is the degree of knowledge of shar'i knowledge, which is praiseworthy, and then when does it enter into the blameworthy? Because he argues that too much knowledge in certain areas becomes blameworthy. Now he begins the chapter, and this is important. لَعَلَكَ تَقُولُ الْعِلْمُ هُوَ مَعْرِفَةُ شَيْءٍ عَلَى مَا هُوَ بِهِ. Knowledge is the ma'rifah, which is another word. It has the idea of correct or sound belief or sound understanding of a thing in accordance with what it actually is. So this is traditionally our scholars believed in what's now known as the correspondence theory of truth. That truth is what corresponds to reality. If it doesn't correspond to reality, it's not true. Part of the modern problem is that they no longer accept certain epistemological understandings that were accepted in the pre-modern world. And what I mean by that is epistemology is the science that studies how we know things and whether that knowledge is sound or unsound. And so the epistemological premise of the Muslims was that the mind and the phenomenal world are actually, they work in a way that enables us to know that what we understand and what we conceive of the world is true. So in the Muslim, in our tradition, you had fada'il. And these are what correspond in the West to what are known as virtues. Virtue has been replaced with, in today's world, with another word, which are values. It's actually an economic term, Wert in German. It came from Max Weber and Durkheim, and these sociologists introduced this idea. But prior to that, people understood virtues because values are relative, right? Values are relative, whereas virtue is, it's not a relative concept. Courage as a virtue should be a universal. And so this is the idea, this gets back again to a different epistemology. Modern people tend to see values as relative, and so, for instance, in Turkey they might do certain things as a culture, that's their culture, but those things aren't applicable somewhere else in terms of behaviors and standards. Whereas from the Abrahamic tradition, there's a belief actually that fitrah, the aboriginal nature or the human being aligns with certain virtues. And in a healthy society, those virtues are going to be inculcated. In a society that has been perverted, those are also going to show signs of perversion. And so traditionally they understood this as having the moral virtues and then the intellectual virtues, and then the religious or spiritual virtues. So each one of these corresponds to the moral virtues, correspond to the two powers in the human being, which are the ghadabiyya and the shahwaniyya. So the irascible and the concupiscible souls. And the moral virtues regulate this. But when you get into the intellectual virtues, these regulate the intelligence or the intellect, and they need to be cultivated. The virtues need to be cultivated. And so the first one is understanding. Understanding is natural to the human being. And the science that really regulates understanding is your understanding is it's an intuitive knowledge. It's something that you simply grasp. So this is idrak. It's the fahm or idrak that a human being knows, for instance, that 2 is greater than 1. It's a first principle. You can't teach that to somebody. It's something that is grasped and understood, or it's not. But you can't actually teach somebody. Even children understand that. It's an intuitive. So this is the intuitive quality, and the second one is science, which we call ilm. Now, ilm is what he's talking about. It's what corresponds with reality. But this second virtue, the identification of it as a virtue is that it can be taught. In other words, if you can teach it, it's a science. The first one, understanding, you can't teach it. That's its defining quality or characteristic. You cannot teach it. It's grasped and it's understood intuitively. You simply know it. It's a ma'rifah that you have. You just know it. And that's why if somebody asks you, sometimes you can't really explain that. Well, why is 2 greater than 1? Well, you can see. Here's 2 and here's 1. Can't you see that that's greater than that? You can't explain it. Why? It's simply, it's reality and it's understood. It's grasped. So the science, though, is mathematics. So
I was going to say, aren't certain types of understanding you come to once you've been taught certain things? So you can
well, no, exactly. It's cultivated. So yeah, understanding is cultivated. And as you move up, understanding gets more and more rarefied. But this is a basic, these are things that are inherent in us that need to be cultivated. Right? And that's why, for instance, when you get into logic, one of the things that logic teaches you is how to define things. And the definition is based on the understanding. You can't define a thing without grasping what it is. Right? So the definition is related to the understanding. But you learn it, you acquire it. These are things that are acquired. But they're based on, this is first principles, that you understand first principles. So one of the things about understanding, أَنَّهُ أَفِي اللَّهِ شَكْ, is there any doubt about God? It's something that you simply understand. And that's why it's a fitrah belief. It's a fitrah belief. Children do not have a problem with God. In fact, you can teach them a lot of different religious beliefs. They don't have a difficulty grasping angels, and you can tell them things that aren't real also, obviously. But their fitrah is to accept that there is something beyond this world. They also, by nature, understand causation, children. In fact, Fakhruddin al-Razi says, if you want to know, if you want to see that causation is the fitrah of the human being, then he said, get a little child that isn't yet walking and hide somewhere and then throw something in front of it, like a ball or a rock or something. And the child will turn and look and try to find the source. He said, if they simply thought that things could just pop into existence, it wouldn't have a problem just seeing a ball pop into existence. But it's the fitrah to look for causation. And that's why it's totally anti-fitrah that this thing could have popped into existence. It's completely against the fitrah of the human being to believe that this universe could have simply just popped into existence without any murajjah, without any force that brought it into existence. And so those are first principles. And then science, so these sciences, I mean, obviously there are these are the theoretical, these are what they call the speculative nadariya. And then you have the amaliya. When you get into the amaliya, you have the virtues that are, they're virtues of prudence. And then there's virtues of sina'a, because sina'a, art and prudence are the practical virtues of the intellect. And the art is what enables you to make things, to do things. And then the phronesis or the prudence, what was called hikmah. The Arabs didn't differentiate between virtue, wisdom, sophia, and phronesis. They didn't differentiate between those. Whereas in the Greek tradition, they differentiate between them. In our tradition, they called them both hikmah. So they put hikmah as a moral virtue and hikmah as an intellectual virtue. As an intellectual virtue, you have it in both the speculative and the practical. So the third one is wisdom. And wisdom, this is hikmah, and he's going to talk about it. Hikmah is when these two work together. When your understanding and your acquired knowledge are working together in a healthy way, you will tend to do the right thing or have the right understanding about it. And so hikmah as a theoretical and a practical will work best at that point. And with the practical virtues, the arts, the sina'a, and they called nahwa sina'a, the art of grammar. You had the fine arts, the mechanical arts, and the liberal arts. So you had the funun, and then you had the sina'at, and then you had these ulum al-ala, and they all went under that. So what he's saying here is that if you say that knowledge corresponds with reality, وَهُوَ مِنْ صِفَاتِ اللَّهِ سُبْحَانَهُ وَتَعَالَى, and knowledge is an attribute of God, كيف يكون شيء علما ويكون مع كونه علما مذموما. How then can a thing, if it's an attribute of God, knowledge is an attribute of God, how can it be blameworthy at the same time? If it's knowledge, how can you have blameworthy knowledge? He says, فَاعْلَمْ أَنَّ الْعِلْمِ لَا يُذَمُّ لِعَيْنِهِ. Knowledge is never blameworthy in and of itself. It's not blameworthy in and of itself, but it's blameworthy because of three reasons. The first one is that it leads to some harm. So the knowledge itself becomes harmful. For instance, sihr, magic, tilasmat or tilsamat, the talismanic magic. And he said, وَهُوَ حَقٌّ إِشَّهِدَ الْقُرْآنُ لَهُ. And this is a reality because the Quran has testified to it. And it's a reason, it's a means by which you can affect a marital relationship. وَقَدْ سُحِرَ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وسلم وَمَرِضَ بِسَبَبِهِ. The Prophet ﷺ himself was put, there were, the نَفَّاثَاتِ فِي الْعُقَدِ. And they breathed 11 times onto it. 11 is one of their numbers, because they're very into numerology, and 11 is one of the numbers that you will find. Aleister Crowley has a lot about 11 and the power of 11. So it's a very, November is a very important month for them. And that's why Halloween, right, is on the cusp of it's the end of the 10th month, and the witching hour is actually moving into the 11th month. So when they did they blew on the knots 11 times, so Allah gave the Prophet 11 verses to counter that magic. And so the Mu'awwidhatayn have, if you count them, there's 11 verses. And this counters the magic out there. So the magic is a blameworthy knowledge, and people learn it. There are people that study it. Now in the West, it's spread. There's if you go into the bookstore, there's all these books on magic, how to put spells on people, how to do things, teaching people all of these occultic sciences and things like that. So, and trust me, you would be shocked at people involved in magic in our society. There's people there are famous people heavily involved in this stuff. You would be amazed at who does this stuff. A lot of actors are heavily involved in it, incantations, musicians, and others. So what he says is, here's what he says, that magic, and this is important as a definition, magic is a type of knowledge that people learn the essences of things and what those essences can do. And that's why in reality, and this is what Arthur C. Clarke said, when you get into higher technology, it becomes indistinguishable from magic. So a lot of what we're dealing with in this world, these people would have looked at it as magic. The nuclear bomb is a magical device because it's understanding the khawas of jawahir. It's understanding the nature of essences, like the nature of the neutron and the power that can be unleashed. And how do you do it with these incantations, mathematical formulae that enable them? And this is, I understand the problem with this, because there's people who are going to say, well, this is knowledge. That's the whole point. It is knowledge. It is knowledge. That is the point. But why is it being used, and what is it used for? Because these things are extremely dangerous. Like, so this idea somehow that Muslims, this is a pre-modern or primitive idea. No. It's very real. These things are very real, learning these things. And this is why many of the scientists in the medieval and in the late, the Renaissance period and the Enlightenment period were involved heavily in magic. And you can study this in the history of it. They were very interested in alchemy, and all of these sciences came out of these occultic sciences. So there's a relationship between very, very sophisticated sciences and magic. That's the point. And he said also be umuran hisabiyya, so mathematical formulae, fi matali' an-nujum, dealing with also with positions of planets. فَيُتَخْذُ مِنْ تِلْكَ الْجَوَاهِرْ هَيْكَلٌ عَلَى صُورَةِ الشَّخْصِ الْمَسْحُورِ وَيُتَرَصَّدْ لَهُ فِي وَقْتٍ مَخْصُوص. They will also take images of a person and wait for specific times. وَيُقْرَنُ بِهِ كَلِمَاتٌ يُتَلَفَّظُ بِهَا مِنَ الْكُفْرِ وَالْفَحْشِ الْمُخَالِفِ لِلشَّرْعِ. And they'll learn incantations. وَيُتَوَصَّلُ بِسَبَبِهَا إِلَى الْإِسْتِعَانَةِ بِالشَّيَاطِينِ. And they will, through this, gain help from this demonic realm. ويحصل من مجموع ذلك بحكم إجراء الله تعالى العادة بحكم إجراء الله تعالى العادة. And Allah, this is an ada also, all right? So it's something Allah has habituated things. And He said, from this will come أحوال غريبة في الشخص المسحور. Very strange things can come out of this. So there's a lot of magic going on, right? And a lot of people are literally under what I'm trying to say is that, because it's very difficult to understand this properly. What I'm trying to say is that there are a lot of what's happening today is in this realm, and it's very difficult for people to understand this. But when you study it, what you find is that a lot of the people involved in mass control are actually heavily involved in this science. And that's what you find out when you do the research. Many of the people that are involved in film, many of the people involved in music, many of the people that are involved in newscasting, they know how to manipulate the minds of people. And whether it's done with this type of magic or simply with the power of technology and the higher magic, the result is the same. You get people that are as if they're possessed. And this is why it would be indistinguishable. We've got kids that are stabbing children. We've got people that are just shooting people and not knowing why they're doing these things. And this is coming out of a culture that is really, really profoundly disturbed in its essence, because no civilization that was healthy would produce the type of games that they're exposing these young children to. No civilization that was healthy would produce the type of films where they have films where the main character tortures people and chops off their fingers and their hands, or slowly tortures them to death. They wouldn't. Muslims would have never come up with these type of ideas, because their culture is not a demonic, dark culture. It's become demonic and dark because of a lot of madness that's happened in the Muslim world. I mean, there's a lot of demonic, dark things going on, and these people are really. Dostoevsky called his book about the terrorists the possessed, and in one translation it's called the demons. I don't know the Russian word for it, but he certainly understood that there was something demonic involved in this. So that's, this is difficult for people to deal with this stuff, but when you actually find out about the characters that were involved in producing a lot of this technology, and you read the history of it, you find that they were really involved in a lot of these things, which is very strange. And when you see the result that these things have on people and the effect that they have on them. So, I mean, I don't know, Arthur C. Clarke, who said that advanced technology becomes indistinguishable from magic, was involved in magic. He was involved in numerology. It's very strange that they place these satellites at 22,000 feet, because those are their numbers, 11, 22, 33. They like multiples of 11 and things like this. So I don't know. I mean, we're all trying to work this thing out, aren't we? But these things are real, and jadoo, whatever you want to call it, it's real. And that's why and I'll tell you something just personally. For me, I didn't really give a lot of this credence, because I wasn't raised like this. I was raised, my father was a college professor. I certainly wasn't raised with the idea, like magic was something, I thought magic was pulling rabbits out of hats. and things like that. When I became Muslim and I heard all these things, and I didn't really, whatever, it wasn't really something. But in the last few years, it's become much clearer to me how much this is actually a force working in the world. And it makes much more sense to me now why there are so many hadiths and so many protective du'as against this stuff. This is evil. And also, the influences of the demons. The Prophet said, or that they should become present. So the demonic realm is real. And there are people, unfortunately, that are actively involved in attempting to bring that realm into this realm. And this is where it gets very strange. So, and they're certainly into numerology. It's a big thing with these people. So he's warning us and saying that this is madhmum. So that's a harmful knowledge. The second reason he said is that is harming other people. So the knowledge is used to harm other people, right? And people do this. Right? They just had a woman, got 6 years in England. She got fired. Fired her, so she started putting on internet that she had rape fantasies. She wanted somebody to come to her house and pretend to rape her, and she gave her boss's number who fired her. There's a lot of sick people out there, right? And they're just, you're working with people like that. We've got pedophiles, we've got rapists, we've got sociopaths, and these people are demonic people, that really they're people that, and Imam al-Ghazali says that they've actually given the shayateen al-jinn a rest. Like they're doing so much work now, the shayateen al-ins, that the shayateen al-jinn are just kicking back and watching it all happen. So there's a lot of demonic forces. Now, whatever you want to call this, if you want to call it magic or whatever you want to call it, these are terms for phenomena in the world. That's the point. And obviously it becomes very difficult because magic is totally haram in Islam. But Imam al-Ghazali will argue in the Ihya, in the Bab al-Safar, that delving too deeply into mathematics is prohibited. And I know a lot of people have problems with that, but if you look at a lot of what's happening on this planet that's so destructive, it's because of this knowledge that has come out. I mean, Muslims use mathematics for very positive things, like building buildings and finding the Qibla and determining the prayer times. They would never have used it to build bombs that could annihilate whole populations. So now we have to deal with the fact that the men that invented the nuclear bomb were all, wizards, really. I mean, they were wizards. And some of them were involved in black magic. This is simply a fact. So he says the second reason is that it harms the person himself. And he says, like astrology. Learning astrology. And he said there's an aspect of astrology because these people did not distinguish between astrology and astronomy. So ilm al-nujum meant astronomy and astrology, because every astrologer has to be an astronomer. Astrology is based on the science of astronomy. You have to know where the planets are. You have to know what constellation the moon is in, the sun is in, and this is all done through astronomy. So he's saying, Allah says, "Ash-shamsu wal-qamaru bi-husban." We put the sun and the moon in reckoned courses that you can determine them. وَالْقَمَرَ قَدَّرْنَاهُ مَنَازِلَ حَتَّى عَادَ كَالْعُرْجُونِ الْقَدِيمِ. There are 28 manzila of the moon. So it throughout the month, it will go into these manazil. And then the second are the ahkam. And he's saying this is learning. He said this is like a doctor uses the pulse diagnosis, and Dr. Yang's an expert in that pulse diagnoses. So he can determine from pulse diagnoses illnesses. Western medicine abandoned this type of pulse diagnoses, but the Chinese medicine, Ayurvedic medicine, traditional Greek medicine was heavily reliant on the diagnostic technique of pulse diagnosis. So he says that astrology is akin to using the doctor who uses pulse diagnoses, that looking at the sunnah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has, because there's a relationship between comets, between phenomena. Like in the Christian tradition, Jesus, there was a comet that indicated his coming. The Prophet mentioned about certain celestial events that will happen before the end of time. The joining of the sun and the moon in mid-month, which would only occur during a polar shift. And then, you know, because as the poles shift, you could get an eclipse at that time, and then you'll have the sun rising in the west if you had a polar shift as well. So Allahu Alam. But the Prophet ﷺ said, إِذَا ذُكِرَ الْقَدَرْ فَأَمْسِكُوا. If you mention the qadar, just don't delve into it. فَأَمْسِكُوا. Just believe in it and don't go delve into it. You have free will. You're accountable for your free will, but there's also qadar. And he said, وَإِذَا ذُكِرَتِ النُّجُومِ فَأَمْسِكُوا. And if the stars are mentioned, just be quiet about it. And this is, there are three positions traditionally amongst the scholars about this science. Some of them said that astrology all of them were in agreement that predictive astrology is haram. They were all in agreement about that. But what they disagreed about was it a science or not? And most of the ulama considered it to be a science, that it was a science. Some of them didn't, but most of them did. Newton was a very serious astrologer. He was also a brilliant scientist, but somebody asked him, he asked Halley, who was the astronomer, he asked Halley, who Halley's Comet is named after, whether he believed in astrology or not. And he said, absolutely not, it's just hogwash. He said, have you ever studied it? And he said, no. And he said, well, then how could you make a judgment like that? Because he said, I've studied it and I don't think that it's hogwash. So, but our tradition is to avoid those things. And he said, وَإِذَا ذُكِرَ أَصْحَابِي فَأَمْسِكُوا. If my companions are mentioned, be silent. If you don't have something good to say, be silent about the Sahaba. Because they're his Sahaba. Some of them made mistakes, undeniably, but they were his Sahaba. And so we're just silent about them, the ones that made the mistakes. قال صلى الله عليه وسلم أخاف على أمتي بعدي ثلاث حيف الأئمة وإيمان بالنجوم والتكذيب بالقدر. I fear from my community three things after me: the tyranny of its leaders, faith in the stars, and denying the qadar. And Umar ibn al-Khattab said, learn from the stars what you guide yourselves by, and then amsiku, just don't delve into it, the stars. So that's a science that he considers to be harmful, and you shouldn't study it. And then he says, and then he said that you know, there's also things that are no benefit. So learning, going too much, delving into something, learning the strange things. Like there's people that learn strange aspects of grammar and they don't know basic grammar. There's people that learn strange things about fiqh and they don't know basic fiqh. So like people that before they learn fiqh, they learn ilm al-khilaf, things like that. And so he says that's the third reason. Al-khawdu fi ilm la yastaqil al-khaydu fihi bihi. فإنه مذموم في حقه. So And then he goes into the problem with the technical vocabulary. So, for instance, he says there's 5 things: fiqh, ilm, tawheed, tadhkir, and hikmah. And he said these have been, the meanings have been altered. He said if you look at fiqh, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لِيَتَفَقَّهُوا فِي الدِّينِ وَلِيُنذِرُوا قَوْمَهُمْ إِذَا رَجَعُوا فِي فَلَوْلَا نَفَرَ مِنْ كُلِّ فِرْقَةٍ مِّنْهُمْ طَائِفَةٌ. That when they go out for military expeditions, a group should stay behind, لِيَتَفَقَّهُوا, to understand their religion. And he said, what do they do when they get back? They لِيُنذِرُوا قَوْمَهُمْ, to warn their people when they get back. إِذَا رَجَعُوا. He said, this is fiqh. He said, this is not like the rules of talaq and itaq and li'an and salam and ijara. He's saying this, they're not warning them, oh, woe unto you, divorce is 3 times, woe unto you, right? He's saying, no, this is a spiritual knowledge so that they're able to have an impact on these people when they come back. And then Allah says, لَهُمْ قُلُوبٌ لَا يَفْقَهُونَ بِهَا. They have hearts, but they don't understand with them. He said he's not talking about fatawa, he's talking about iman, that they don't believe with them. And so he said it's a problem that fiqh has become associated solely with jurisprudence. And when a group came to the Prophet, he said, ulama'u, hukama'u, fuqaha'u. And he said he was talking about their states. And then he said, somebody asked Imam al-Zuhri, which of the people of Medina have the best knowledge of fiqh? Afqahuhum. He said, atqahum lillah, those who have the most taqwa. فَكَأَنُّ أَشَارَ إِلَى ثَمْرَةِ الْفِقْهِ. What he meant was the fruit of this. Taqwa is the fruit of internal knowledge. It's not fatawa and aqdiyah. And then he said, أَلَا أُنَبِّئُكُمْ بِالْفَقِيهِ كُلَّ الْفَقِيهِ. Can I not tell you who a real faqih is? And then they said, indeed, tell us, Ya Rasulullah. He said, مَنْ لَمْ يُقَنَّطَ النَّاسَ مِنْ رَحْمَةِ اللَّهِ. Those who don't cause people to despair from the mercy of Allah. وَلَمْ يُؤَمِّنْهُمْ مِنْ مَكْرِ اللَّهِ. But don't make them feel safe from the design of Allah. وَلَمْ يُؤْيِسْهُمْ مِنْ رُوحِ اللَّهِ. And don't cause them to despair from God's grace. وَلَمْ يَدَعَ الْقُرْآنَ رَغْبَةً عَنْهُ إِلَى مَا سِوَاهُ. And they don't abandon the Qur'an desiring some other thing. Those are the real fuqaha. And then Anas ibn Malik said that I should sit with a people and remember Allah, who are remembering Allah from the morning until the evening, is better than that I should free 4 slaves. Talking about something much deeper. And so he said that this is the real ilm, al-ilm billah, al-ulama billah, which would obviously include, Allah's, His attributes, how He works in His creation, these things. And then the third is tawheed. And he said, this has become to mean sina'at al-kalam. It's theology. That's how people understand it. He said that this isn't how it was understood. Tawheed is much deeper than just learning these rules. It's actually perceiving God in creation. It's not in any anthropomorphic or hulul or anything. God is not His creation. But He is actively engaged in every instant in His creation. Allah is sustaining us. He's al-hayyul qayyum. La ta'khudhu sinatun wa la nawm. He doesn't blink. He doesn't have a nap. He can't, if Allah turned away from creation for one instant, it would all disappear. So the fact that He is actively engaged in His creation, this is real tawheed. It's being aware that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala He is the reality behind all of this. He is al-hayy, the living, al-qayyum, the sustainer. One of them said in the dua to show us your qayyumiyataka sariyata fi jami' al-makhluqat. Show us how you're sustaining this thing in every instant, all of the creation. Kullu yawm huwa fi sha'n. He's always on, in other words, sustaining his creation. So this is real tawheed, and that's why he puts tawheed with tawakkul in the ihya later. He puts them together, because once you see that everything is in the hands of Allah, you trust in Allah. But if you're lost in the al-hakamu takathuru, takathur, which means yatakatharun, like they're trying to vying to get more and more wealth. So that has them in lahu. But by ishara, al-hakamu takathuru, multiplicity, takatharat al-ashya. The multiplicity has you preoccupied. You're in takathur, you're not in tawheed. Hatta zurtum al-maqabir, until you go to your graves, and then you become completely present. So this is an illusion. All of this multiplicity that you're seeing it's real. We're not Hindus. It's real, but the reality of it is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is sustaining it in every instant. And He created it with haqq, bil haqq. And so that's real tawheed. It's not this other thing. That's what he's saying. And he said this leads to tark shikayat al-khalq. If you have real tawheed, you stop complaining about creation. Tark al-ghadab alayhim, you stop hating them. You don't get angry at people. In the same way, it's not, and don't think, this is not Sufi quietism. You know, it's not like you don't see injustice and you try to right it. You have a different understanding. You see it as ibtila, liyabluwakum ayyukum ahsanu amala. He created this situation to test us. How are we going to respond? How are we going to act? But you have to see that Allah is allowing this whole thing to happen. And so you stop complaining, you stop getting angry, وَالرِّضَى وَالتَّسْلِيمُ لِحُكْمِ اللَّهِ, and you become content with the hukm of Allah. Because you see it for what it is. Allah did this. He puts people over us. If we're bad, He puts people over us that don't fear us and they have no mercy with us. The Prophet ﷺ said, لا تجعل, he said that, لا تسلط علينا بذنوبنا. Don't put over us, because of our sins, those that don't have any mercy. And the thing is, if you look at places where it's worse, often it's because those people are actually closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because إِذَا أَحَبَّ اللَّهُ قَوْمًا ابْتَلَاهُمْ. And so this is where you can't see it as, oh, they're getting what they deserve. It's like, no. We might deserve worse, but He's purifying them in this world, whereas you're going to get yours later. So you can't see it in some kind of simplistic, oh, they're just getting, again, it's not this kind of karmic thing where, well, the beggar, that's his own fault. We look with ayn al-shafaqa and rahmah, with mercy, and that Allah, the Prophet ﷺ said, جُعِلَ عَذَابُ أُمَّتِي فِي دُنْيَاهَا. Allah put the punishment of my ummah in this world. And so those people that are closest are going to get the worst. And also رَفَعُ الدَّرَجَاتِ. Allah elevates people, because it's either a punishment or it's رَفَعُ الدَّرَجَاتِ. He's elevating them in ranks. It's either one or the other. And it's not for us to decide. If you see somebody, a Muslim who's in tribulation, it's not for you to decide whether it's takfir al-dhanub or it's رَفَعُ الدَّرَجَاتِ. That's Allah's business. And so he said that is what will happen when you have that. And he said one of the fruits of Tawheed is Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, when it was said to him, he was sick, and they said, أَنَطُبُ لَكَ طَبِيبًا فَقَالَ أَطِبِيبًا أَمْرَضَنِي. Should we get you a doctor? He said, the doctor made me ill. And it's a high maqam. Abu Bakr is at a whole other level. فقول آخر لأبي بكر لما مرض قيل له ماذا قال لك الطبيب في مرضك قال لي إني فعال لما أريد. So they said to Abu Bakr, what did the doctor say? Who saw you? You know, what did he say about your sickness? And he said, I do whatever I want. فَعَالُ لِمَا أُرِيدُ. That's what Allah says. فَعَالُ لِمَا يُرِيدُ. He does whatever He wants. In other words, it's His mulk. Our bodies are His dominion. If He wants to make us sick, He can make us sick. If He wants to keep us well, which again doesn't negate asbab, health, staying well, doing all those things. Right? And that's why إِذَا مَرْضْتُ فَهُوَ يَشْفِينَ. If I get sick, He heals me. That's what Ibrahim alayhi salam, right? He said the outward of it is to say La ilaha illallah with your tongue. But the inward of it is أن يرى الأمور كلها من الله رؤية تقطع التفاته عن الوسائط, that removes being caught up in the asbab, in the means. وأن يعبده عبادة يفرده بها فلا يعبد غيره. And he worships Him in a way that is completely, the worship is uniquely for Him. This is a tawheed that will get you out. This is the tawheed that comes from not following your caprice or your passions. And this is why Allah said, أَفَرَأَيْتَ مِنِ اتَّخَذَ إِلَهُ هَوَاهُ. Haven't you seen the one who took his passion as his God? And the Prophet ﷺ said, أَبْغَضُ إِلَهٍ عُبِدَ فِي الْأَرْضِ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ تَعَالَى هُوَ الْهَوَى. That the thing that Allah, the God that is worshipped in the earth that Allah hates the most is desire. Right? The God that's worshipped. Right? Because there's other gods beside God. Not in reality, but in people's consciousness, in their minds. La ilaha bihaqqin. La ilaha يعني إلا الله. So there's no God bihaqqin in reality except the one true God. But people worship things. People take their nafs as a God. And then he says the next level is dhikr wa tadhkir. And this is misunderstood by a lot of people. So he says now tadhkir has become stories, poetry, fantastic utterances, and all these things. And he said, as for stories, it's a bid'ah. Right? And he'll say later, if there's sound stories, stories of Sahaba, stories of the Prophets that aren't embellished, then that's part of wow. But a lot of the storytelling that arose in the Islamic tradition had fantastical elements to it. And the qasas was seen as something very negative. Once Al-A'mash, one of the great scholars, he went into Basra and he saw a storyteller telling stories, and the storyteller said, حَدَّثَنَا الْأَعْمَشِ. So A'mash went into the middle of the circle and he started plucking his underarm. And the Shaykh said, the storyteller said, Ya Shaykh, ala tastahi, aren't you ashamed? He said, why should I be ashamed? I'm in Sunnah and you're telling lies that A'mash told you something. I'm A'mash and I never told you anything. So there were people that just going around and making things up. And the biggest liars, Ahmed ibn Hanbal said, the biggest liars are the qusas and the suwal, or su'al. The storytellers and the beggars. Beggars will tell amazing lies. Like if you go to Mecca or Medina, these people will come with these stories and they just spin stories. A lot of them are the same stories because they work together. So they'll have their little bag, it's cut. They'll say they were at Quba and they lost all their money. They're lying about it. So dhikr is remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Ata rahimahullah said, مَجْلِسُ ذِكْرٍ يُكَفِّرُ سَبْعِينَ مَجْلِسًا مِّن مَجَالِسَ اللَّهُ. This is a really important statement. Ata, who was one of the great tabi'een, said that a gathering of dhikr, and inshallah this is included in them because we're in remembrance of Allah and His Deen, that a gathering of dhikr will expiate 70 gatherings of entertainment, lahu. And we need this now because so many people sit and front, people can't read the Quran very long, but they can sit, watch a movie for 2 hours, no problem. But a lecture for 2 hours, they can't sit through it. Right? Knowledge, things like this, they don't. So he's saying to do that, and then Ahmad ibn Hanbal said, ما أحوج الناس إلى قاص صادق. People need truthful storytellers. Because stories is part of our tradition. The Quran, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us ahsan al-qasas, the best stories. So he says, if it's from the Prophet's stories, if he's giving a sound riwayah, the Prophet told stories. He told the story of the 3 men. One was bald, one had leprosy, one was blind, and the angel came in the form. That's in Sahih Muslim. So the Prophet ﷺ told stories. Stories are very useful, but the danger is these embellished stories. And then Ash'ar, he warns about that too much. And وَالشُّعَرَى اتبعهم الغاوون, they're followed by the اتبعهم الغاوون ألم ترى أنهم في كل واد يهيمون, wandering about, يقولون ما لا يفعلون. And then he talks about the shatahat. And the shatahat are things that some of the excessive Sufis would say, outrageous statements. And he talks about 2 different kinds. One that's false claims. And you should always, if you see people that start telling you they saw the Prophet in a dream or this, that, or that, that's always red flags. They're either ignorant or they're a con artist. And one of my favorite, when I was studying Arabic literature, one of my favorite writers was Badi'u Zaman al-Hamadani, who wrote Maqamat. And he had a character in there, the main character, Abu al-Fath al-Iskandari. And he was basically a religious charlatan. And I thought it was very interesting. Like, at the time, I didn't think about it in that way, that I came to later realize that he was really warning people about religious charlatans, because there's a lot of them out there. And religion, because people, it's very hard for people to imagine somebody lying to them about God or about the Prophet, but people do it. There are a lot of liars out there. And there's a lot of people they're out to get your money, and they'll come with all these stories, and also beware of people that build you up and tell you, you're supposed to, you don't throw dirt in their face. There's a hadith. It's actually, you pick it up. If somebody's praising you, the sunnah was to pick it up and then just do that. In other words, I'm dust. It's like I'm nothing. That's what you're doing. ترى في وجوه المداحين. It's just to remind them and yourself, I'm nothing, just dust. Zygote that got out of control. Right? And he said that this art form, has great harm for common people. And so making false claims, you can fool people, so especially simple village people, the pir. There's all these pirs that go, and they're simple people, they charge money, they write them like the hijab, they call it, what do they call it in Pakistan? Ta'weez. They write ta'weez, charge them money. The only ta'weez you need is قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ الْفَلَقِ and قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ النَّاسِ. That's teach people that. That's all they need. They don't need any. You don't need to wear anything. It's permissible to wear something from the Quran. The Prophet, there's a riwayat, put things on Hassan and Hussein. Most of that is for people that have a lot of waswasa. Sometimes it helps them psychologically. It's like a placebo. It'll help them, just calm them down. And we seek refuge with kalimati lahi tammati So it's not saying that it's not me, but Allah is the protector. The hijab will not protect you. Allah is the protector. So that's important to remember that. And then he said that there's a type of shatah that's it's almost like a madness. And he said that they'll say some things that are confusing. I'm aware of the time. I want to get through this. And then finally, he goes into something really important, which is about the bataniyah and in this area, that the occultists, they want to destroy Sharia, and they want to destroy it through false interpretations. And so this is some of the extreme Sufis that argued that Sharia wasn't necessary for them. I mean, you had that. And unfortunately, every group has people that go astray like that. And then finally, the last word that he goes into is hikmah. And the hikmah is wisdom. And the hakim, he said, can mean a tabib, a doctor, a sha'ir, a poet, a munajjim, an astronomer. And he said even the people that do they do lottery are called So he said that hikmah, وَمَنْ يُؤْتَ الْحِكْمَةَ فَقَدْ أُوتِيَ خَيْرًا كَثِيرًا. Those that are given wisdom have been given great knowledge. كَلِمَةٌ مِنَ الْحِكْمَةِ يَتَعَلَّمُهَا الرَّجُلُ خَيْرٌ لَهُ مِنَ الدُّنْيَا وَمَا فِيهَا. To learn a hikmah and then is better than the world and what's in it. And so hikam can be like aphorisms. Much of the hadith, I mean, it's all hikmah. But the hikmah is the opposite of like abath, meaninglessness. Hikmah is wisdom, and it's the highest of those intellectual virtues, the hikmah. The Prophet ﷺ spoke in pure wisdom. All of his sayings are wise. And Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah has a very important statement. And every Muslim should know this, because it's like a standard to judge your faith. Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah said, Al-Islam hikmatun kulluha, wa rahmatun kulluha, wa maslahatun kulluha, wa adlun kulluha. Right? So he said the Shari'atullah, the Sharia, is hikmah. All of Sharia is hikmah. And all of Sharia is rahmah. And all of Sharia is maslahah. And all of Sharia is justice. So he said, فَإِذَا انْتَقَلَتْ مِنَ الْحِكْمَةِ إِلَى الْعَبَثِ. If it goes from wisdom to foolishness, it's not from the Sharia. إِذَا انْتَقَلَتْ مِنَ الرَّحْمَةِ إلى ضدها. If it goes from mercy to cruelty, it's not from the Sharia. إذا انتقلت من المصلحة إلى المفسدة. If it goes from welfare to harm, it's not from the Sharia. وإذا انتقل من العدل إلى الجور. If it goes from what's just to what's unjust, it's not from Sharia. And that's a really good standard for people, just to use your common sense about things. Because if it doesn't seem right, it's probably not right. So he says, this is what has happened, and he blames it on what he calls ulama as-su. And he says, now listen to this. All of this is min talbisati ulama as-su. All of this is from these bad ulama. فَإِنَّ شَرَّهُمْ أعظم على الدين من شر الشياطين. إذا الشيطان بواسطتهم يتذرع إلى انتزاع الدين من قلوب الخلق ولهذا لما سئل رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم عن شر الخلق أبى وقال اللهم غفر حتى كرر عليه ثم قال هم علماء السوء. And the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم was asked, he said that all of this comes from the bad ulama. And he said they're worse for this religion than the demons. In fact, he said shaitan through them has been able to remove the religion from the hearts of people. You can see why they burnt his book. And then he said, and this is why the Prophet ﷺ, when he was asked, who are the worst people? He refused to answer initially. And they kept asking him until finally he said, ulama us-su. Bad ulama. فَقَدْ عَرَفْتَ الْعِلْمَ الْمَحْمُودُ وَالْمَذْمُومُ. Now you know what's praiseworthy and what's blameworthy. إِلَيْكَ الْخِيرَةُ فِي أَن تَنْظَرْ لِنَفْسِكَ. Now you have the choice, look for yourself. Who do you want to follow? The Salaf? Or do you want to go the way of this deluded people? Because the Salaf, their knowledges have disappeared. And what people are following, most of it is mubtada'un muhdath. It's all bid'ah and innovated. وَقَدْ صَحَّ قَوْلُ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ بَدَأَ الْإِسْلَامُ غَرِيبًا. I mean, this is 1,000 years ago, people. And it's true what the Prophet ﷺ said. Islam began as a strange thing. وَسَيَعُودُ غَرِيبًا كَمَا بَدَأَ. And it's going to return as a strange thing. فَطُوبَى لِلْغُرَبَاءِ. Blessed are the strangers. فَقِيلَ مَنَ الْغُرَبَاءُ يَا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ قَالَ الَّذِينَ يُصْلِحُونَ مَا أَفْسَدُهُ النَّاسُ مِنْ سُنَّتِي. Who are the strangers, O Messenger of Allah? Those who rectify what people have corrupted from my way. وَالَّذِينَ يُحْيُونَ مَا أَمَاتُوهُ مِنْ سُنَّتِي. And those who bring to life. That's why he called it Ihya. Those who bring to life what people have caused to die from my way. الغرباء ناس قليل صالحون بين ناس كثيرا من يبغضهم أكثر ممن يحبهم. In another riwayah that Ahmad relates, the strangers are a few people who are righteous amongst many people. Those that don't like them are more than those that like them. وَقَدْ صَارَتْ تِلْكَ الْعُلُومُ غَرِيبًا. All these sciences have become strange. يُمْقَتُ ذَاكِرُهَا. If you remind people of them, they don't like you. وَلِذَلِكَ قَالَ الثَّوْرِي رَحِمُهُ اللَّهِ إِذَا رَأَيْتَ الْعَالَمْ كَثِيرَ الْأَصْدِقَاءِ فَاعْلَمْ أَنَّهُ مُخَلَّطٌ. This is why Athawri said, if you see an alim that's got a lot of friends, you should know he's mixing things. لِأَنَّهُ إِن نَطَقَ بِالْحَقِّ أَبْغَضُوهُ. Because if he speaks the truth, people aren't going to like to hear it. And then he goes about the amount of knowledge that you should learn from these. And he basically just says that the most important knowledge is to learn. I'll finish this, because this is actually really important. He says it's very important to focus on what you need. And I would recommend reading Ayyuhal Walad, because he wrote that at the end of his life. It's a very important book, because he just says and this is a man who mastered all the sciences of his time. He was an engineer, he knew handasa, he knew medicine. He had it all, really. The man was one of the great human geniuses in history. So this is a man who spent his life mastering everything. And he was, of all people, he is I think, the most trustworthy in this assessment. He said, don't waste your life learning a lot of useless information. Learn Arabic grammar in what you need to understand the Book of Allah and the Sunnah of the Prophet. Don't spend your life learning grammar. He said it's a waste of your life. Your time is precious. And then he said, don't spend your life learning all the details and khilafat and all these things. Learn what you need to get to your Lord. And so what he said that people love, he said for theology, all you need is my book, Al-I'tiqad fi al-I'tiqad. And that's the second book in the Ihya. So it's 100 pages. That's all. He said that's all you need. You don't need any more than that. He said don't go deep into these things. He said don't go into jadal. Now this is really important, I'll end with this. He said, you can benefit people as long as fanaticism hasn't got hold of them. Did you get that? Listen to this. None of this will benefit with common people if ta'assub has gotten hold of them, fanaticism. أما المبتدع بعد أن يعلم من الجدل ولو شيئا يسيرا فقل ما ينفع معه الكلام. Once a mubtadi' gets hold of dialectic, argumentation, there's nothing you could do to benefit him. Even if you beat him in your argument, he won't leave his way. Why? He said, a common person, you can bring him back if you have a good argument, as long as the fanaticism hasn't got hold of him. Once it gets hold of him, فَإِذَا اشْتَدَّ تَعَصُبُهُمْ وَقَعَ الْيَأْسُ عَنْهُم, we have to despair from them. And then he said, إِذْ التَّعَصُبُ سَبَبٌ يُرَسِّخَ الْعَقَائِدَ فِي النُّفُوسِ. Fanaticism is one of the means by which things become deeply embedded in a person's personality. وَهَذَا أَيضًا مِنْ آفَاتِ عُلَمَاءِ السُّوءِ. He said, this is one of the hallmarks of bad ulama. فَإِنَّهُمْ يُبَالِغُونَ فِي التَّعَصُّبِ لِلْحَقِّ. They exaggerate their fanaticism for the truth. وَيَنْظُرُونَ إِلَى الْمُخَالِفِينَ بِعَيْنِ الْإِزْدِرَاءِ وَالِاسْتِحْقَارِ. And they look at anybody that disagrees with them as being contemptible and low. فَيَنْبَعِثُ مِنْهُمْ الدَّوَاعِي بِالْمُكَافَأَةِ وَالْمُقَابَلَةِ وَتَتَوَفَّرُ بَوَاعِثُهُمْ عَلَى طَلَبِ نُصْرَةِ الْبَاطِلِ. They begin to actually support batil in this fanaticism. وَيَقْوَى غَرَضُهُمْ فِي التَّمَسُّكِ بِمَا نُسِبُوا إِلَيْهِ. And then, because they're attributed to this school or whatever they're in, he said, it becomes very strong in them. And then he says, had they come, وَلَوْ جَاءُوا مِنْ جَانِبِ اللُّطْفِ وَالرَّحْمَةِ وَالنُّصْحِ فِي الْخَلْوَةِ. If they came with gentleness, with kindness, with a lack of harshness, taking people privately, not saying it openly, condemning them openly, you're this and you're that, and no, just take them aside and give them good advice. He said, لَا فِي مَعْرَضَ التَّعَصُّبِ وَالتَّحْقِيرِ. Not with your fanaticism and your I'm the only way, and your belittling and your contemptibility towards them, they would have been successful. Now, here's the key. All right, this is the key. Now, he's spilling a big secret right here. ولكن لما كان الجاه لا يقوم إلا بالاستتباع. When stature and prominence only comes from having a lot of followers, right? How many you have on your Twitter, right? Oh, he's got 2 million. Well, Lady Gaga's got 22 million. You know, it's no big deal, right? But those people that want lots of followers, لا يستميل الأتباع مثل التعصب واللعن والشتم للخصوم. Nothing will give you followers better than being a fanatic, cursing others, attacking others, right? That's how you get your followers. اتخذوا التعصب عادتهم وآلتهم. They took this fanaticism as their habit and their tool. وسموه ذبًا عن الدين. And they called it defending the religion. ونضالا عن المسلمين. And defending the Muslims. وفيه على التحقيق هلاك الخلق. But in reality, they've destroyed the people. ورسوخ البدعة في النفوس. أما الخلافيات التي أحدثت في هذه العصارى المتأخرة وأبدع فيها من التحريرات والتصنيفات ومن المجادلات ما لم يعهد مثلها في السلف. As for all these differences that they brought forward in these later ages, and they have all these books and all these arguments and all these things that the Salaf didn't do, فَإِيَّاكَ أَن تَحُومَ حَوْلَهَا. Woe unto you that you should start circulating around these things. وَاشْتِنِبْهَا اجْتِنَابَ السِّمَّ الْقَاتِلِ. Avoid it like you avoid deadly poison. فَإِنَّهَا الدَّاءُ الْعُضَالِ. Because it's a disease that will never be cured. وَهُوَ الَّذِي رَدَّ الْفُقَهَا كُلُّهُمْ إِلَى طَرْبِ الْمُنَافَسَةِ وَالْمُبَاهَةِ. Right? Now, and we'll end here. Maybe some people will say, الناس أعداء ما جهلوا. People are just ignorant. They're enemies of things that they're ignorant of. Like, in other words, you're just saying this because you don't really know the situation. Like, we're defending the religion, blah, blah, blah. فلا تظنن ذلك. Don't think that. فعلى الخبير سقطت. You have found the expert. فاقبل هذه النصيحة. Accept this sound advice. ممن ضيع العمر فيه زمانه. From a man who wasted a good portion of his life in this very thing I'm talking about. وقد زاد فيه على الأولين تصنيفا وتحقيقا وجدلا وبيانا. And I did it better than the people before me in my writing, in my rigor, in my dialectic, and in my elucidation. I mean, he's saying it right there. I was the best at this. I knew it better than anybody. So take this. ثُمَّ أَلْهَمَهُ اللَّهُ. I mean, he's talking in third person out of humility. And then God inspired him رُشْدَهُ وَأَطْلَعُهُ عَلَى عَيْبِهِ and showed him his own faults. فَهَجَرَهُ وَاشْتَغَلَ بِنَفْسِهِ. So he abandoned this way and he began preoccupied with his own heart. ولا يغرنك قول من يقول الفتوى عماد الشرع ولا تعرف علله إلا بعلم الخلاف. Don't be deluded by people that say, oh, fatwa is the basis of our religion and you only know it if you know all these differences. Anyway, he goes on, but that's a really important point. He said, كن من الشياطين الجن في أمان. Be safe from these demons. واحترس من شياطين الإنس. And guard yourself. Just shayateen al-jins are easy to handle. Mu'awwidhatayn. He's saying, really guard yourself from the human demons. فَإِنْهُمْ أَرَاحُ شَيَاطِينَ الْجِنِّ. They've given a vacation to the jinn. مِنَ التَّعْبِ فِي الْإِغْوَاءِ وَالْإِضْلَالِ. By leading people astray. They're doing a much better job at it. So, Allahu Akbar. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. This is this is it. It's our crises. The Prophet said, إذا رأيت شحا مطاعا والدنيا مؤثرة وإعجاب كل ذي رأي برأي فعليك بخاصة نفسك لا يضرك من ضل. If you see this world preferred over the next world, if you see the people covetous and no longer generous with what God's given them, and you see every opinionated person amazed at their own opinion. It's called Twitter, folks. If you see every opinionated person amazed at their own opinion, how clever they are, how much they have to share with the world. You know, once you see that, the Prophet said, take care of your own soul. So, I say, oh, this is quietism, you're abandoning haqq. طيب, تفضلوا. Yeah, good luck. I mean, we've got majaneen out there. This is mad. This place has gone mad. It's gone mad. You can't even talk to people anymore. Huh? Were you going to say something? No, go ahead. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. جزاكم الله خيرا.
Assalamu alaikum everyone. I have a few announcements, important announcements about tomorrow, about the schedule. So if you bear with me 1 minute, and then inshallah, we'll pray Isha right after that, inshallah. So tomorrow, as you know, that alhamdulillah, you've got the morning off, alhamdulillah. And so, but there's a few important things, which is